Imagine you are walking down a busy city street on a Tuesday afternoon. You look down and see a crisp $20 bill laying on the sidewalk. Nobody is around, and there is no way to find the owner. You pick it up. You feel a quick rush of dopamine. You think about the nice lunch you are going to buy, or the coffee you can treat yourself to. Now imagine a different scenario. You are walking down that same street, and you reach into your pocket to pay for your bus fare. You realize that the $20 bill you had earlier is gone. It must have fallen out when you pulled out your keys. Which of those feelings is stronger? For almost every human being on the planet, the pain of losing that $20 is significantly more intense than the joy of finding it. Even though the mathematical value is exactly the same, the emotional weight is completely lopsided. Welcome to the world of fiscal psychology. Today, we are exploring one of the most powerful and dangerous cognitive biases in the human brain: loss aversion. By the end of this video, you will understand why your brain is hardwired to make irrational financial decisions just to avoid the feeling of a loss. And, more importantly, you will learn the mental frameworks to fight back. To understand why we hate losing so much, we have to look back at our ancestors. In the modern world, losing $20 means you skip a fancy lunch. But for a hunter-gatherer 50,000 years ago, a loss meant something very different. If you were a primitive human and you found an extra patch of berries, that was a gain. It was nice, but it did not fundamentally change your survival status for the week. However, if you lost your stash of dried meat, or if you lost your spear, that was not just a loss. That was a death sentence. Evolution does not care about your happiness. It cares about your survival. The humans who were obsessed with protecting what they already had were the ones who survived long enough to pass on their genes. The ones who were casual about losses did not make it. This means that every single one of us has a brain that is effectively overtuned to detect and avoid losses. We are the descendants of the most paranoid, loss-averse humans in history. This was a great survival strategy when we were dodging saber-toothed tigers. It is a terrible strategy when we are trying to manage a retirement account or a marketing budget in 2026. In the 1970s, two psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky decided to put this human quirk to the test. They wanted to see if they could actually measure how much we hate losing. They went to a group of people and offered them a very simple bet. They said, "We are going to flip a coin. If it lands on tails, you lose $100. If it lands on heads, how much money would you need to win for you to agree to take this bet?" Think about that for a second. If you were perfectly rational, any amount over $100 would make it a good bet. If the win was $101, the math is in your favor. But that is not how humans work. Kahneman and Tversky found that the average person would not take the bet unless the win was at least $200. This gave us the loss aversion ratio. On average, losses are twice as powerful as gains. We need the potential for a 2 times gain just to balance out the emotional fear of a 1-time loss. This discovery fundamentally changed the field of economics. It proved that humans are not rational actors. We are emotional creatures who use logic as a secondary tool to justify our fears. This concept is at the heart of prospect theory, which eventually won a Nobel Prize. The fundamental idea is that we don't look at absolute wealth, we look at changes from a reference point. Your reference point is your current status. Anything above it is a gain, and anything below it is a loss. But the value function is asymmetrical. The curve for losses is much steeper than the curve for gains. This means that a 5% drop in your portfolio feels like a disaster, while a 5% gain feels like a nice but minor victory. If you want to master your money, you have to understand that your brain is lying to you about the severity of these changes. One of the most common ways loss aversion ruins our lives is through the sunk cost fallacy. Have you ever sat through a movie that you absolutely hated? About 30 minutes in, you realize it is terrible. The acting is bad, the plot makes no sense, and you are bored out of your mind. But you stay. Why? because you already paid $20 for the ticket. You think to yourself, if I leave now, I have wasted my $20. But here is the logical truth. The money is gone. Whether you stay or whether you leave, that $20 is never coming back. By saying you are not saving your money, you are just losing another 90 minutes of your life. This shows up in every corner of our lives. It is why people stay in bad relationships, because they have put so much time into it. It is why businesses keep funding failing projects, because they have already spent millions on them. The brain views stopping as a loss. And because we hate loss so much, we would rather keep suffering than admit that the original investment is gone. Consider the Concorde effect. The British and French governments spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing a supersonic jet. Long before it was finished, it was clear that it would never be profitable. But they kept pouring money into it. Why? Because they had already spent so much. They were so afraid of admitting the loss that they ended up losing billions more. This is the trap of fiscal psychology. The more you spend on a mistake, the harder it becomes to walk away. In the world of investing, loss aversion creates a specific phenomenon called the disposition effect. Imagine you buy two different stocks. Stock A goes up by 20%. Stock B goes down by 20%. Which one are you more likely to sell? Data shows that most amateur investors will sell stock A to lock in the win. They want that feeling of a gain. Meanwhile, they will hold on to stock B for months or even years. They tell themselves, it will come back. I have not actually lost anything until I sell it. This is the peak of fiscal insanity. By selling your winner, you are capping your potential growth. By holding your loser, you are tying up your capital in a failing asset. But your brain does not see it that way. Selling stock B means realizing the loss. It means admitting you were wrong. It means feeling that sting that is twice as strong as the joy of the win. So we hold on. We hope. We pray. And in many cases, we watch that 20% loss turn into a 50% loss. All because we were too afraid to feel the initial sting. Professional traders have learned to inverse this behavior. They cut their losses quickly and let their winners run. They treat every dollar as a soldier, and if a soldier is in a bad position, they pull them out immediately. There is another layer to this called the endowment effect. In a famous study, researchers gave a group of students a coffee mug. They then asked the students how much they would be willing to sell the mug for. The average answer was around $7. Then, they went to a different group of students who did not have a mug. They asked them how much they would be willing to pay to buy that exact same mug. The average answer was only $3. The only difference between the two groups was ownership. The moment you own something, it becomes part of your status quo. Giving it up feels like a loss. Acquiring it only feels like a gain. This is why car salesmen want you to take a test drive. This is why software companies give you a 30-day free trial. They are not just being nice. They know that once you use the car, once you set up your data in the software, you feel like you own it. After 30 days, cancelling does not feel like not buying. It feels like losing something that is already yours. Think about the New Coke disaster of 1985. The Coca-Cola company decided to change its secret formula. In blind taste tests, people actually preferred the new taste. But when they released it to the public, there was an absolute riot. Why? People felt like something was being stolen from them. They didn't just want a better tasting soda, they wanted to protect the original that they already owned in their minds. The pain of losing the classic Coke was far greater than the pleasure of a better tasting new one. Once you understand loss aversion, you will see it everywhere in marketing. Companies have mastered the art of framing their offers to trigger your fear of loss. Compare these two headlines. Option A, save 20% on your electricity bill. Option B, stop losing $50 every month on your electricity bill. Option B almost always performs better. Why? Because saving is a gain. Stopping a loss is a survival priority. Think about limited time offers or only 2 items left in stock. These are not just about urgency. They are creating a preemptive loss. The brand is telling you, you currently have the opportunity to buy this. If you wait, you will lose that opportunity. The brain reacts to the loss of opportunity with the same intensity as the loss of money. We buy things we do not even need, simply because we do not want to lose the discount. Insurance companies are essentially businesses built on loss aversion. We pay a guaranteed small loss every month just to avoid the possibility of a large loss later. Often, we pay way more in premiums over our lifetime than the actual value of the potential loss. But the fear of that one big hit is so strong that we happily overpay to make the feeling go away. Think about extended warranties on electronics. You buy a $500 TV and the store offers you a $50 warranty. Mathematically, it is almost never worth it. But you think, if this TV breaks next week, I've lost $500. The $50 is a small price to pay to avoid that specific pain. If you think loss aversion is just about coffee mugs and $20 bills, look at the story of Nick Leeson. In the early 1990s, Leeson was a star trader for Barings Bank, one of the oldest and most prestigious banks in the world. He started making some unauthorized trades that went south. Initially, the losses were small. He could have admitted the mistake, taken the loss, and probably kept his career. But loss aversion took over. He could not stand the idea of realizing that loss and admitting failure. So, he doubled down. He made bigger, riskier trades to try and win back the original loss. He hid the losses in a secret account. He kept digging the hole deeper and deeper, driven by the desperate need to avoid the sting of the loss. By the time he was caught, he had lost over $1 billion. He literally caused the collapse of a bank that had been around for over 200 years. This is the ultimate danger of loss aversion. It turns rational people into desperate gamblers. There is also a fascinating flip side to this called the house money effect. When people are winning at a casino, they tend to take much higher risks with their winnings. In their heads, they don't view that money as theirs yet. They haven't anchored it to their status quo. But the moment they step away from the table, that money becomes theirs. If they go back an hour later and lose it, it hurts twice as much. The key to financial freedom is treating every dollar with the same logic, whether you found it on the street or worked 40 hours for it. In real estate, loss aversion is the reason markets can freeze. In a housing downturn, sellers will often refuse to lower their price even when nobody is buying. They say, "I paid $500,000 for this house, and I won't sell it for a penny less." They would rather leave the house empty for a year, losing thousands in taxes and interest, than realize a loss on the sale price. They are anchored to that $500,000 number. They are paralyzed by the fear of the loss, even though selling and moving on to a better investment is the smarter move. So, how do we stop our primitive brains from ruining our financial futures? We cannot delete loss aversion from our brains. It is baked into our biology. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear, fires up whenever we perceive a loss. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the logical center, is much slower to react. This means that your initial gut reaction to a loss will always be emotional. But we can build logic guardrails. The first strategy is the outside view. When you are stuck on a decision, ask yourself, if I were a consultant hired to look at this situation objectively, what would I tell my client to do? By removing the I from the equation, you break the endowment effect. You stop viewing the asset as yours and start viewing it as a data point. The second strategy is rule-based systems. This is why professional investors use stop-loss orders. They decide, before they ever buy the stock, exactly where they will sell if it goes down. They remove the emotion of the moment. They make the decision when they are calm, so they do not have to make it when they are panicking. The third strategy is reframing. When you are faced with a loss, do not focus on what you are losing. Focus on what the non-loss is costing you. If you have a failing marketing campaign, do not think, I am losing the $5,000 I already spent. Think, if I keep this campaign running, I am losing the $10,000 I could be making on a better strategy. Every time you choose to hold a loss, you are actively choosing to lose a future gain. The fourth strategy is to broaden your perspective. We often look at losses in isolation. A single bad trade, a single bad purchase, a single missed opportunity. But your life is a series of thousands of decisions. In a long enough timeline, losses are inevitable. If you view your life as a single, large portfolio of experiences and decisions, one loss becomes just a tiny data point. It stops being an emotional disaster and starts being the cost of doing business. Your brain is a survival machine, not a wealth-building machine. It will try to convince you to stay in bad situations. It will try to convince you to avoid risks that are actually in your favor. It will try to make you feel like a $20 loss is the end of the world. But now, you know the truth. You know that the sting of loss is just an evolutionary echo. It is a ghost from a time when berries and spears were the only things that mattered. The next time you feel that familiar knot in your stomach, that fear of letting go, take a breath. Step back. Look at the math. And remember, the only thing worse than losing is letting your fear of loss cost you everything else. What is one loss you are currently holding on to? Is it a stock? A subscription? A project that is not working? Go into the comments and name it. Admitting it is the first step toward reclaiming your logic. If you found this deep dive into fiscal psychology helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe. We are going to keep tearing down the mental walls that stand between you and a rational financial life. Thanks for watching.